But when they begin to see this innovative um, research coming up from Africa, it's like, yeah, they always tell, no, it's funny, Simran. They always tell you, even like you write to reviewers and they tell you about, oh, this is, we do not doubt the novel nature of this one. This is highly novel, but it's not been tested within, the context of, and then they bring in like the Western framework has to validate what we do.
Hello, everyone. I'm Simran, and I'm really excited about this one. Today's episode is a special one because we're joined by someone who brings hard strategy and bold vision to everything she does. Juliet Inyang joining us directly from New Zealand, and she just told me it's cold out there. And she's a researcher, she's an entrepreneur, and a digital strategist who work lives at the intersection of academia, social impact, and community building. She's on an idea to amplify African voices in research and support career growth, not just in theory, but through real systems she's building. She's also the force behind Academic Hive and VACA for Africans, two platforms driving meaningful change across the continent. Her work spans education, policy development, storytelling, and you name it. And whether it's a leading multi stakeholder projects or researching the experiences of African immigrant women in New Zealand, wow, Juliet brings a decolonizing African centered lens to the table. Basically, if you're talking about research, representation, and resilience, she's who you want to be in the room. Juliet, welcome to RB Talks. I am literally so excited to learn from your journey today. Can you tell me and everybody about your journey into research and what sparked your interest initially?
Oh, thank you so much, Simran. It's a pleasure to be here with Research Bunny. I must say you're doing amazing work, by the way.
Thank you.
So you've pretty much covered, a summary of what I do. But about my journey into research, I would say I became really interested in research right from my undergrad during my third, like 300 level. I studied marketing in the University of Calabar, Nigeria. And during my undergraduate days at the third level, I started learning research. And then I had an amazing, fabulous teacher, who did not just train us on research like in the classroom. He also took special interest in me and took me to the field. Yeah, so I would follow him to the field. I'll see what he do, and then he sometimes, outsource a bit of task to me. And so I just started getting interested in that research space, and that was what motivated me to move into a master's degree, to still examine, like explore research further at that level. And because of that interest, I also found myself in academia. I was employed as a lecturer at the University of Calabar. And so research became my life. And so that was it. But in the process of all of that, I actually saw myself as someone who who loved knowledge, and who was interested in how knowledge is shared, how it's disbursed. Yeah, I'm sure in the course of this interview we'll talk more about maybe some of the things I observed, both positive and negative, maybe. Yeah, but I saw that the way knowledge is shared can either silence or empower people. Yeah. So as a young academic in Nigeria, I noticed that African voices were often sidelined in global conversations. I'm not gonna say it's totally not there. It's there, but it's just at the side. And especially when it comes to stuff about identity, comes to stuff about work and actually research in general, right? African voices are not as loud as other voices from other continents. So that curiosity about whose story gets to be told, whose story is silenced or minimized, I don't know if this is the right word, what's the politics around sharing your story, about carving a narrative, So it sort of drew me to research, and I started getting into it, started getting to understand how research is done, what's the technique, what's the process behind it. And yeah, so it drew me to research as a way of amplifying those marginalized narratives, So yeah, and my own diasporic journey as well, also deepened that resolve because I've been privileged, or I would say fortunate, because yeah, I've been fortunate to visit different countries, still on research basis. Yeah, and I've been able to see, like really explore or really examine or experience this whole research, voice, marginalization, thing going on globally, especially when it comes to African voices. Yeah, and so that's what sparked my interest in the African narrative and when it comes to research and putting our voices out there.
Wow, that's such an amazing thing. And I always have, I've spoken to a lot of times now. I always like how your choice of words, and you have such a great journey, and that's such a literally a meaningful place to start. And especially hearing about how it sparked your interest in research. It's amazing how literally your early moments set the foundation for everything that followed. So it's amazing to hear about that. uh, but speaking of that foundation, what does research for African mean to you in a practical sort of in everyday terms?
Okay. It means research that is not just about Africans.
Yeah.
So research in practical terms would mean research with Africans and research for Africans.
Well, yeah.
So it's doing research in a way that honors African ways of knowing. Research that is responsive to the local context,
Yeah.
And for me personally, research that translates to practical or tangible benefit for communities that it studies.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Um I love the theoretical part of research. I love it.
Right.
Exploring knowledge, coming up with ideas, ingenious ones,
Yeah.
proposing hypotheses and doing all of this.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to see all of that. But to Juliet, research in everyday practical terms means that beautiful framework you've designed. How does it translate to tangible benefits, to tangible practice. For the communities it studies, because you're not studying this and all those frameworks are still built within a context, right? So at the end of the day, does it end up being some really fancy looking, beautiful, popular, well cited model? Or does it translate to helping that context, within which that framework was designed or for which that framework was designed? So yes,
Yeah.
when you talk about research and you tell me about research, the kind of research that tickles my fancy is research that converts those theories into actionable knowledge, not just journal publications.
Yeah. Oh no, that is very important, right? Making research something about people, and especially when people can see and use in
Exactly.
their daily life, right? I literally feel you. I feel that it's just not about knowledge for somebody's knowledge sake, right? It's about action and actual presence, right? So I love how you are grounding in its impact. It's so important. Now when I think about impact, and this probably will take you down a memory lane, but was there a moment that you realize existing research frameworks weren't telling your story accurately?
Several moments, several of them. As a new researcher, then I I tried, of course, during the undergrad, you publish your research. I mean, you, as a not publish, rather, you carry out research. And then during my undergrad, I carried out research around poverty alleviation using agricultural marketing strategies and all that, right? So I did that, and in my own very little, I mean, with the little resources I had as an undergraduate student, right, and all of that. But I went to the field, did this research, came back with the findings, and I was really excited about it. I mean, really new, really novice researcher, excited about it. And like, wow, I need to, let's publish it. And then I heard about research publishing and I said, oh, okay, you can, beyond just submitting this research as an undergraduate project, you can,
Yeah.
put it out there, get it published. And so with
Yeah.
that excitement, with my supervisor then, said, oh, I met him and said, let's try to get this published, because this is really interesting. I love the insight that came out of this. I was really new then, really excited about academics, really excited about research. And when we started sending out this paper, and you start getting feedback, the whole rejection, the rejection. I know, yeah, maybe back then, looking at the way I did research then and the way I did it now, I can understand the rejection, right? But, over time, I've seen that even some of the rejections, and even just this morning, I was talking to one of my friends, some of the rejections that we face, it's not because our science is bad. There's just, I don't know if it's some form of gatekeeping, but that's the way myself and some other African scholars perceive this, right? Especially African scholars who are in the continent, not those who are out of the continent, right? Because for those of us who are out of the continent, yes, being in that other space gives you the privilege to, take advantage of the resources within your reach. But while I was in the continent trying to get my work published within the continent, listening to the experiences of other people in the continent, trying to get their work published, it seemed like there was a whole lot of gatekeeping, right? And in fact, there's the research space is highly westernized and is biased in the favor of Western scholars, such that even if you are bringing your African ideologies, your African frameworks, because it's looking quite, yeah, it looks novel. They'll always tell you it looks novel, but it's not been tested somewhere else, so it's not valid, right? So
Right.
as Africans, I started asking myself, if we are already discovering ourselves, all right, I mean, it's not like we've not been discovering ourselves before now, but if we are in the eyes of the world, discovering ourselves and trying to get our stories out there, and then you pushing it back to us and saying that we are not, I mean, our research is not valid. It's not like it's not novel. It's novel because this is quite a new concept. It's quite new, but because it's not always been there with the rest of the African or with the rest of the westernized frameworks. So it's not really valid. And then the rejections keep coming. So that was like a moment of those moments. It's a combined thing. It's not like a single moment, right? So, but those moments just helped me realize that, yeah, we need to adapt our own methods to, reflect African worldviews. So, yeah, that was something that was just like the eye-opening moment for me, that the current framework is not it's not designed to. I'm trying to be very careful with the choice of words I use. It's not designed to. Yeah, yeah. It's not designed in the favor of African scholars or African research or research emanating from Africa. Yeah.
Wow, that kind of realization is bold and as well as disruptive, right? When you suddenly notice the silence, the much of gaps that's happening in your daily life, and it really changes how you work, how it shows up in your
Mhm.
work. And this is what I feel shifts you, especially you, how it shaped your personality, and it shifts your research from compliance to courage,
Absolutely.
right? So wow,
Absolutely.
that's bold, right? So especially when you're in that space, right? How do you approach centering African narratives in your work?
Um, One thing I consciously do is okay, so my work, I mean, when you say my work, it cuts across different things. So I'm gonna answer this question based on the context of my research work, right? So I'm currently studying, just for context, I'm currently studying the stigmatization of skilled African immigrant women professionals in workplaces. Yeah, I'm using New Zealand as a case study here. So using that as a context for this question you've asked, when you say how have I approached centering African narratives, right, in the work I do,
Right.
I intentionally or consciously let participants lead the storytelling.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So in doing that, I resist the urge to fit, because the urge is there. You feel like, as a researcher, you know a lot already. So you want to carve the story for them. So I resist the urge to fit their stories into this westernized or Eurocentric theories or framework. Yeah, at the graduate school level, they expect that you use theories to frame your research actually. So yes, I use theories to frame my research, but even the theory I use currently is also from an African. Yeah. So I allow Africans to lead the storytelling. I resist that urge to try to pick the stories of maybe like my participants and then try to see how it fits into the model of the Eurocentric theories. Yeah. So currently, what I do is I also use indigenous African philosophies and indigenous languages where possible, and also collaborative interpretation to ensure that the findings of my research is authentic and it feels authentic and it resonates strongly with the people I work with. So that's what I do. So the regarding my research, I consciously use African methodologies, African methods, Yeah, but I do that in collaboration with the Western frameworks. Yeah. So this is not discarding the Western frameworks, but I consciously bring this, as a way to say, just as we have this Western framework, we also have these ones that could, they can work hand in hand because at the end of the day, it's collaboration, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, it's just not about adding uh, a local example, right? It's about literally
yeah,
starting from within, not just adding
exactly.
anything from the outside. And I think it's great. It's so powerful that how you make the community the narrator, not just the subject. So that's amazing. So now speaking of communities, as you mentioned about different communities, what have been some of the most meaningful responses or impacts that you have seen from the people that you have worked with?
Okay. So there are three sets of people I am keen about working with. I mean, I work with African scholars in general, but three audiences. I'm very passionate about three audiences: women, young people, and migrants. Yeah. So those are the three audience that I am very passionate about. So when you say some of the meaningful responses I've gotten from those communities I've worked with, I'll say like women in my research group, in my research community, they often tell me how empowering it feels to have their struggles or their triumphs validated. Yeah, so they get to feel, or they feel seen beyond the stereotypes. Yes. And then for my work that I do at Academic Hive, where I train and support young African researchers, for my work there, some of those mentees and clients, because we also support African institutions too, by helping them make their research visible globally. So some of these young people, the ones we train, and then some of these clients we work with as well, they often write back to say, our mentoring, our workshops gave them the confidence to publish, apply for competitive scholarships, put in the proposal for that grant, share their stories. It gives them that confidence to go out there to be authentic to themselves as Africans. So that's something we get from them. And it helps us feel good, and it validates the work we do. That yes, Africans need to tell their stories, and we are helping, or, we're not the ones telling the stories for them, but we're helping them tell their stories.
That's amazing. That kind of feedback hits differently, right? When communities actually seen in your research, it's literally not, and you already mentioned about it. It's not about just validation, it's about partnership. That's when the work really comes alive. And
Completely, yeah.
especially when we are on a global lens.
Right? The world is
Yes,
a global
absolutely.
village. We are all interrelated and interconnected in one way or the other. So that's it.
Right. So, but with global eyes on African research, what are the
Mhm.
biggest, and I think you would be the right person to tell me about it. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you have encountered?
The first major one would be that our research is less rigorous. Oh, it's not as rigorous as, what is done, in the Western world. Yeah. So African researchers are held as, it's only relevant to Africa. But that's not really the case because, even recently I just read, I don't know where did I read that, um, a country now has just started having malaria. But malaria used to be something that, it's just when you think of malaria, you think of, oh, it happens in Africa. But I've just read, yeah, I need to, the name of the country is not coming to head right now, but if you Google it, you'll see it. So one of these very popular Western countries have also, have also discovered malaria. Yeah. So if the research, because and there's a whole, I'm just using malaria as an example, and then there's a whole lot of research done in the malaria space in Africa. A whole lot has been done. So if you feel that African research is less rigorous and it's only relevant to Africa, oh, but now it's beginning to happen in, out there. Where would you turn to? Where do you turn to for some ideas on how to begin to treat it within your context? That same place you undervalued, right? So, African research is often deeply innovative, and that's because it has not always been there. It's not always been there. It's always been there. We've always had our way of knowing. We've always had our way of learning. We've always had our way of doing things, but it's just not been visible at the global platform.
Wow. Yeah.
So now that we are beginning to, pay attention to our visibility and put ourselves out there. Some of the things we already do, some of the things our ancestors, our forefathers have been doing in the past, we
Yeah.
are now telling the world, oh, look at how it used to be done. It now comes off as being very innovative, very, interesting, very ingenious. But then it's still undervalued just because it doesn't sort of conform to the Western ways of knowing or Western paradigms. So there's still that colonial, master slave mentality that goes on in the world. That's
Yeah.
superiority complex. Yeah. So it's some form of ego, pride, and gatekeeping, a lot of gatekeeping by certain Western agencies that are in control of the research narratives. And so
Wow.
when they begin to see this innovative um, research coming up from Africa, it's like, yeah, they'll always say, no, it's funny, Simran. They always tell you, even like you write to reviewers and then they send you back, oh, we do not doubt the novel nature of this one. This is highly novel. But it's not been tested within, the context of, and then they bring in like the Western framework has to validate what we do. Meanwhile, these are our experiences. This is firsthand. This is authentic to us, and we're telling you that this is also the way we know. This is what we know. This is our knowledge. You can now test it out in your context and see how it applies to you. But
Yeah.
no, they want us to test it out within they want us to validate what we do using those Western framework.
Wow. Oh, that
Yeah.
makes no sense, right? And that's a critical
So
one
yeah,
because
that's the
yeah,
biggest misconception, yeah, about it.
wow, this assumption that African research is always catching up rather than leading, and
Exactly. Yeah,
calling out that out is so necessary to shift the whole lens.
it
And
is. That's what it is.
yeah, it's absolutely. And thanks for sharing that. And I would definitely love to hear more about it. But was there any specific project or any moment in your work that you were extremely proud of? Now they have told us about the misconceptions, something that you're extremely proud of. And I'm sure there would be a list, but was there any specific moment that you remember?
Oh, okay. Yeah, there are actually a whole lot I've been really
I
proud
am
of.
sure. Yes.
Which one should I pick in particular right now? Okay, I'll just speak to the current one, the one I'm currently doing.
Okay, right.
So I'm proud of my work showing how African women migrants, navigate workplace stigma through collective support and cultural pride. So I'm proud of this work because it's the first time that I stepped out of the box to boldly ground my work in a completely Afrocentric theory, framework, method. Like it's the first time. Yeah, I've been working, if you go through my past researches that I've published, I've always been working with the African audience because that has really been dear to my heart, right?
Yes.
I've always been working with the African audience, but I've always borrowed, you know, theories, like applied the insights based on theories from Western frameworks. Yes. But for
Absolutely.
this work that I am doing, why I'm pointing it out as the one I am especially proud of is the one that I would say I was bold enough to
Yeah.
step out of the box and create my own box.
Wow.
I say yes, that African voices, both in research and in practice, should be heard. So while I'm still surveying, or while I'm still studying the African community,
Right.
this time around, I am studying it using the perspective or the lens of Africans. Yes. So it's it's challenging the narrative that is out there. Yes. And that is what based on my research, right? Then based on the other side of like the community service side of things, like the work I do at Academic High, for example, I'm proud of creating a research coaching program that has helped dozens
Yes.
of African scholars succeed globally. I'm proud of that as well. Yeah. So practically that's something I'm proud of, right? That has helped others. But personally to me, to my research, what I'm proud of is this current research I'm doing that is totally, completely grounded
Yeah.
in African indigenous ways of knowing. It's
Wow, that's
something
amazing.
I'm really proud of. Yes.
Yeah. I love hearing about projects that just don't do well, but it does feel right in your
Yeah,
gut. So I think and those are the ones that stay with you all your life or wherever you
absolutely.
go. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. Now let's talk about balance. How do you keep
Okay.
your work rigorous and still make it accessible to the community that you're serving?
Okay. Balance. Ah. Okay. So one thing I try to do to, keep that balance
Yeah.
is that I make sure that my findings are shared back in simple, relevant ways. I mean, you've been following me. I mean, you've been watching. You
I
you
know.
reached out to me because of what I do, right? I'm very bold about sharing my findings. I'm bold about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I try to do is instead of just limiting my finding to published works or journal publications, I make sure that these findings are shared back in simple, relevant, but impactful ways, like workshops. I also have like a WhatsApp community where I share these things. I give a community newsletter while I still maintain the standard that is needed for academic credibility. All right,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but I still try to translate this to, very accessible language as well. Yeah. So some
Wow.
of the, yeah, some of the competitions I participate in, some of the opportunities I take advantage of, it's not because I just want to take advantage. I just want to, participate in these competitions. For
Yeah.
example, I participated in the 3 minute thesis of my university some few weeks back. Um, while while it was quite an interesting challenge, and I wish that I made it to the final, right? But it wasn't about that for me. For me, it was about using that platform to
Yeah.
share the insights, to share the findings, to share the voices
Yeah.
of Africans, yes, to the global community. Yeah, so I look for simple, accessible ways of doing this. Yeah, that's the way I try to maintain the rigor necessary for publishing in academic journals, and also still balancing it with sharing this finding to the community in ways that is going to support, empower, and help African communities.
That's actually the sweet spot, isn't it? Because research that communities can't understand or use isn't serving its full purpose, right? So it's important to
Yeah,
tell everything in the manner that people could understand. That's the basic requirement,
absolutely.
right?
Yes,
And
completely. Yeah.
and I wanted to keep this part at the last, but I think that everybody should just check out your LinkedIn. It's amazing. It's amazing how you mention everything, how you keep it so simple, so engaging. And I think it takes literally a lot of real creativity to bridge that gap. And you're doing such amazing work. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
What you do is so
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. Really
no,
happy
you're
to.
you're amazing. But speaking of invisible labor, right? What challenges do African researchers, specifically African researchers, face that the rest of the world often misses?
You're right. There are many Africa. I mean, we cannot say. Definitely, there will be challenges, right? Trying to break into a system that is not originally designed for you comes with a lot of challenges, right? So, some of the challenges that we face, which may be invisible, because I feel that it's not totally invisible, but which may be invisible to the outside world, would be unreliable infrastructure. So, since sometimes even the platforms to publish our researches, right? Some of these platforms could be unreliable. I don't want to mention names, but when I was still an undergrad, there was this platform I really admired that was publishing African researchers. But lately, or in the past 2 years, I don't know what happened to them. I don't know. So it's just like silence and all that, right? So that's one of the unreliability. that we're looking at. So imagine that there's a platform that has, Africans look forward to with the whole hope that, okay, we can put our work here, it can be visible with this, and then somehow along the way, you're not hearing anything about it anymore. So that's quite disappointing. So, and that's why we tend to turn to, this Western infrastructure, Western publications, journals, try to see how to get into those spaces. And yeah, those spaces were not really originally designed for African voices. So that's why when we get this pushback, it makes us feel like, we're not, our work is not deserving of, being in such spaces. It's not like it's not deserving of being in such spaces. Just originally, I mean, look at it. It wasn't designed for you. It was designed to serve those communities. So Africans should also have their own, infrastructure to project the voices. But yeah, that's one of the things. So unreliable infrastructure, limited funding. I mean, yeah, there's a whole research is something that we're still struggling to get some governments to really, pay attention to or consider priority. Yeah, it's still a struggle in many African countries, really. Lack of mentorship, because we're discovering ourselves. We also see that I mean, everyone is discovering that everyone is trying to grow, right? In Africa, everyone is trying to go up. So there are really no very strong mentorship networks that you'd say this is the network to go to if you are African. Yeah, it's really very few of them. So that lack or that, limited mentorship opportunities too is something that researchers, one of the challenges that is hindering our research as Africans. And the mental toll, yeah, I think this actually bothers everybody. The mental toll of having to constantly justify the value of your African-centered work in academic environments that, again, were not originally designed for you.
Absolutely.
So there's that toll of, you find yourself constantly justifying why you want to use this.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, there are other well-established frameworks out there. Why are you focused on this African one? So you always, it comes with there's just it. Yeah, it's easy to give up if you're not grounded, if you're not convinced, if you don't have that conviction while you're doing that research within an African lens. It's easy to just give up and follow what's out there already. So yeah, those are some of the challenges that I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. No, these aren't just logistic issues, right? These are deeply structural, right?
Yeah,
And
systemic issues actually. Yeah,
yeah, and it takes a lot of resilience to keep going, knowing
completely.
how much you're navigating even behind the scenes. Now, if we are thinking ahead, what kind of, I think you've already touched on a lot
Yeah.
of points, but what kind of resource support or
Okay.
infrastructure to be mentioned does Africa urgently need at the moment? Like right at the moment.
At the moment, we need affordable access to journals.
Yeah. Okay.
At the moment, um, it's very expensive to access journals that are in the kind of spaces we want our voices to be heard. It's very expensive. So we need affordable access to journals, affordable access to data tools. We need stronger mentorship networks.
Absolutely.
And we need funding too, because yeah, there's limited funding, right? But we need funding. But this time around, not just funding. I mean, I've benefited from some of this funding. I've been a beneficiary of some of them, and I'm really grateful for the funding I've received so far. But we need funding schemes that prioritize um um local issues instead of or local agendas instead of donor driven agendas, because what I see is that some of these donors, they already have their agenda,
Yeah.
so they fund you to
Yeah.
push the agenda further.
Yeah.
So why we need funding now, if someone is paying, I mean, there's this saying, right, that he who pays the piper dictates the tune, right? So
Yeah.
if we keep um relying on funding that is donor driven, then we are still silencing, yeah, while we're getting the money, we're still silencing our voices because we're trying to push the interest of the donor. But I
Absolutely.
believe that in the spirit of collaboration,
Yeah.
right, in the spirit of Ubuntu, yeah,
Yeah.
so Ubuntu is an African philosophy that I am because we are, right. So it encourages harmony, encourages a mutual respect for each other. So in that spirit of Ubuntu, we should have funding that, yes, still drives the donor's interest, but prioritizes
Yeah.
the local um priority or local agenda. The issue, it pays attention to the issues of the local community, the African community. Why, yes, as the founder, you still have your interest, all right, but let it not be that it's prioritizing your agenda as the
Yeah.
donor, because your agenda might be in conflict, direct
Absolutely.
conflict with the African agenda, right? So prioritize the local issues, but still, put it within. I'm sure there should be a way we can mutually come to an agreement for that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. We need systems that are built for African researchers
Yeah,
and not on some borrowed frameworks. And there should be some sustainable support, not something like
exactly.
one-time grants, right? Not like one-time grants or something. Absolutely. And one thing I've been very curious about while speaking to you, um, how does language play a role in your work across different African communities? Has it been ever been a barrier to you, or generally that you have seen around?
Uh, yeah. Africa has so many languages. Yeah, it's multilingual. Yeah. So, in the course of my work, yes, language has, sort of been a barrier. For example, if I set up there are some workshops I do once a year. Academic Hive organizes workshop for African scholars, but those workshops are run in English. But not every African country, you know, speaks English. Yeah, so that way, non-English speaking countries are excluded. So yes, that's a barrier because the message we're sending out is for Africans in general, not English speaking Africans. But because of language, you can see that we have unintentionally excluded a major part of Africa who would have benefited from the message of our workshops. So yeah, language can exclude, it can distort meaning as well. So what I try to do is where I need to still navigate certain spaces in which language or where English is not the language being spoken there, I try to engage interpreters and I try to use local expressions where appropriate and remain sensitive to what can and what cannot be translated without losing cultural meaning. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you try to translate something and the meaning is lost.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So yeah, I just try to navigate that. I mean, I really wish that there is some kind of tool that
Yeah.
would. Yeah, I think I looked up ResearchBunny. I think you have something like that. I don't know how much it covers African languages, but I wish there was some kind of tool that could help with navigating these barriers. I mean, at least at the simplest way, say if Academic Hive organizes a workshop for Africans, and then it would be great to know that there is a tool that can automatically translate, the messages of this workshop to the languages of other African scholars. And it would be great to have our brothers and sisters, joining irrespective of what languages they speak. So, yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
language is really a big barrier, actually.
You're absolutely right. I went to one of the conferences um, in April, and I was attending health conferences in India at that time, and I met a few people where I got to know that we are missing out. So ResearchBunny was initially launched in English, and became when I met a lot of people across the globe, and there were a lot of people from coming from Africa, great researchers, PhD scholars, and we did chat, and that's the thought that was one of the thoughts that we need to add more languages, and that's how
Wow.
we weren't able to add a lot until now, but we got suggestions. But we are always open to sort of feedback that it doesn't.
Mhm.
You're absolutely right. It doesn't lose the context. That's the whole purpose of adding languages. It's and the way
Actually,
that you mentioned it, I think it's a great and a thoughtful thought to how to navigate it, because language is literally is just not about language. It is culture, it is context, it's
yes,
memory, it's
yes,
just not
yes,
it's not any side issue. It's very central to everybody, and
it
it's
is.
important
Yeah.
that we do at least acknowledge how importance does it hold altogether. That's amazing. That's amazing, and it's when it's coming from you, I could think that what how people think about it when English is not their first language, how
Mhm.
important it is for them to keep their roots active. So it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
very important. So I'm sure there would be times when everything starts piling up, right? How do you stay grounded? And I know you're extremely grounded in your work. That's what makes me ask you this. How do you stay grounded in this world?
Well, how I stay grounded is I really lean back into the networks that we've created over time. So
Yeah.
the women I work with, the young people, the scholars whose life we've impacted, I try to reconnect with them. Just, sometimes you feel, yeah, there are days where I felt like, what's the essence, right? What's the meaning of it all? I mean, I could be somewhere, just resting my head somewhere and just living a very quiet life and minding my own business.
Absolutely.
Um, but then days like that, I just go back, try to reconnect with those people,
Right.
see what they're doing, and sometimes the stories have been amazing. You see
Yeah.
someone telling you, "Oh, I'm so grateful that I found you at the time I did." So those things just energizes you again and make you, feel motivated to continue. And yeah, so I lean into my own support network as well. And of course, my faith. That's something I also hold dear. Yeah. So that's the way I navigate it. Yeah.
Having something to look forward to, something
Yeah.
outside of the work, it really makes all the difference. It actually keeps you um, whole while doing all the things, especially
Mhm.
doing all the hard things in life. So, yeah, I think it's great. And I imagine many young African researchers look up to you. I'm sure they do. They must. But what do you
it's
hope?
it's it's a gift I'm grateful for.
Yeah, no, you
A
should
gift
be
I'm
right.
grateful
You
for.
should be right. What do you hope that they take away from your journey?
When you say they, you're talking about African researchers.
Yeah, like young African researchers, probably African young women researchers.
What I hope the takeaway from my journey is that their stories are authentic. Their ways of seeing the world is valid and it's necessary
Yeah.
because we need new ways of doing things in the world. We can see how far existing, you know, or long upheld ways are going. Yeah. Um well, I don't want to go into that. Well, yeah, so their their stories and their ways of seeing the world are valid and needed, and
Yeah.
they can create pathways, they can open doors for others through their work.
Yeah.
That's what I would
Right.
say. So if they do not share their story, how would they open the doors for others? So just as I am sharing my story, just as I am sharing my journey, and they're watching it and they're getting inspired, they should also pay it forward and do the same. That's something I wish they can take away from this. Yeah.
Wow. This message is gold. You don't have to wait for permission. They already belong. And you
Yeah,
have to ask questions. You have to tell your stories. It's important.
exactly. For permission. Don't wait for
Yeah.
permission.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of
They already
the
belong to the world. So,
yeah,
yeah.
one of the
Don't wait.
popular mentors, I look up to would say, use the permissionless way. You don't need permission to share your story. Yes.
Yeah. You don't need anybody's permission, right? Who made
No,
anybody the
you
king?
don't.
So, yeah,
You
absolutely.
don't.
No, absolutely. Now, if there was one thing that you could change about African research, how it's being published, funded, or seen or shared globally, what that would be?
Hmm. I started this interview by saying that there are certain powers that, yeah, global powers or heavyweights that are creating or carving the narratives when it comes to research. Yeah, the narrative around research is in the power of a few. We know them. We know them. I'm not going to have to mention them in this interview, but we know them. If the research is not in the publications by this kind of agency or this kind of publisher, it's not regarded like research. So there are few powerful agencies who are holding this research and who are controlling the narratives around research. So if I could change something about how African research is published, funded, and shared, I am going to try to decentralize access or democratize access, if that's the word for it. That is,
Right.
I'll try to see how to make African research more visible, more affordable, more celebrated. To be on equal footing with Western scholarship, just as Western scholarship is regarded, as being valid and rigorous. I also try to see how to take African researchers to that level as well. Because I think when it comes to the content, we have the content, we have our way of knowing, we have the
Yeah.
we are our research is novel. I'll say that because I've seen that for real. Irrespective of the industry, is it in science, is it in engineering, we have novel things that we're doing, right? But then, because it's not very visible at that global level, right? So if I were to change anything, I'd see how to make African researchers more visible at that level. Actually, not if I could change it. I'm actually working towards doing that. I know I may not do it 100%, but I'm playing my part to ensure that that is possible.
I think that shift in power, right? From being included to being actually in charge. And that's what we
Exactly.
need
Yeah,
to
lead your narrative.
yeah.
Exactly. Lead your
Yeah, right.
narrative.
Absolutely. No, it's time to it's 2025, and I think it's time to move from visibility to ownership. Right. Awesome. We are almost coming. I'm enjoying this conversation, but we're almost coming to our end of our podcast. But I
All
do
right.
have very interesting question and a final question from you. Uh,
Okay.
if you had a billboard, and this is my all of the questions are almost my favorite, but this one I'm very excited about. So
Okay.
if you had a billboard in every African capital city, what would it say?
Okay. I don't
Yeah.
even need to think twice about that. Your story matters. Tell it.
Yeah. Wow,
Don't
that's
wait for
amazing.
permission. Tell your story. So it's just
Um,
gonna be there. Simple words. Your story matters.
yeah.
Tell
Wow,
it.
that's amazing. Wow, that's bold and beautiful too. That's
Yeah, with a call
bold
to
and beautiful.
action. Tell it. Tell
Yeah.
your story.
Wow, that's a good note to end on. But thank you very much, Juliet. Thank you very much.
Oh,
I love
it's
this conversation. I always love speaking to you. You know that, right?
yeah,
Uh,
I know.
thank
I know.
thank you so much for your honesty, for all the insights, and especially the reminders that research isn't just about discovery. If I'm
Yeah,
using the right word, it's about dignity, right? And to everybody who's listening, let's rethink how we define credible, global, rigorous, and
yeah,
let's start to ask more honest questions, and let's center more local truths, right? We all need it. And
absolutely.
as you mentioned, we need to start telling our stories. And most of all, let's keep building the kind of research world that reflects all of us, right? So
Exactly.
that's great. And thank you everybody for listening to this podcast today. I
All
hope you
right,
do
thank
well.
you.
And thank you, Juliet, for your time. And I hope you enjoy this conversation. We will see you in the next one. Thank you very much. And bye. Take care.